Hi, friend. Logan Clements here with the Better Events Podcast. And in this week's episode, we are tackling and debunking a little bit of the boring side of events, talking about things like permits and how much power you need at your events and parking and all that fun stuff. We actually get into a pretty lively discussion about it. So hopefully you learn something new that you can apply to your next event.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Better Events Podcast. We are talking about the 3 Ps today, and we're so excited. Permits, power, and parking. We're going to just go into all of these boring little things, but these essential parts of events and talk a little bit about them. So, Logan, hello. And before we get into this episode, if you had to decorate a holiday tree using only items from your last event, what would it be? What would be on it?
I mean, I live in the production world, so I was laughing as I am visualizing a tree covered in just like AV items, which I realize now would be like a very expensive tree. Like a microphone here, a clicker here.
It has the lights already. They're just different.
They'd just be different lights, and then I feel like it would just be all by like stage bench, like a little box of mints here, some tissues here, some other just random items. I don't think it would be a very attractive looking tree, to be honest. But Mary, how about you? What would be on your tree if you had to decorate it with items from your last event?
Like a lot of tape. A tape tree. Instead of ornaments, you can hang different kinds of tape because I feel like we got double-sided, we got masking, we got the normal scotch, you got your gaff tape, you got duct tape. It could be a tape tree. I actually like this.
Actually, a tape tree. I feel like if you are someone who works in the industry that uses a lot of tape, if you haven't done this already, you should.
Yeah. Be a fun like office thing or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I do also think, full disclosure, our listeners should know that both Mary and I put up our Christmas trees over a month ago at this point.
Woo, woo, woo. We're those people, and
We are
it's
those
okay.
people. Yeah, I'm telling you, it brings me joy, and so you can't tell me that I can't put it up in early November. Well, we want to plug our Better Events Conference, which is fast approaching, Mary. I can't believe in just over 2 weeks, we will all be gathering on Thursday, December 18th in Seattle at the Labor Temple in downtown. And we're doing a full day of conferencing. And so if you are someone who is interested in joining us, there are still tickets available. These are kind of your last chance to get them. And they start at $169. That gets you access to our day of programming from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the 18th. Also gives you access retroactively to some of the recorded sessions from our virtual day on October 1st. So hurry to come join us. We have some fun surprise and delight things that are going to be happening. And I know this is just something I'm really excited to end the year on. So that's our conference. Visit bettereventspod.com/conference to learn more. Let's get back into our episode talking about why we chose this topic. If you read those 3 Ps and you went, Logan, Mary, snooze fest, you'd be right. But also I go, sometimes boring is necessary. A lot of what we do in events world could be categorized as boring. And I think we wanted to give space for some of these quote unquote boring or less fun sounding aspects of an event. And before we jump in, just caveating, Mary and I are both not lawyers. We are not familiar with all of the permitting and licensing and legal requirements of every state and country in the whole wide world. So just know this is coming from our personal experience, but I do feel confident there's going to be a nugget here for you listeners that you can apply to your event because that's what we strive for here. But Mary, let's start broad as we normally do. How would you define boring parts of event planning?
I'm giggling because it is like what you said, Logan. I think the boring parts of event planning are much of the event planning. It's like the behind the scenes. People ask me like, what do I do every day? I'm like, I'm in meetings and I'm like on my email. And then it gets fun and I get to go to an event, but most of the time it's boring. And so it's the planning process. Like, what are those things that we're talking about before the event that really aren't that fun, like you were saying? it is those things like permits and power and parking. Like, you all don't email us and say, can you please do an episode all about parking? Like, we've never received an email like that. So they are important little things. And so how we define them are, I think, Logan, you did it well, but like those essential like pre-planning parts that affect your day of as well. What would you add to that?
Yeah, and I think just on top of it, a lot of this is like the hidden part of an event. So, your attendees are going to totally notice the decor or the food or drink you're serving, but like they don't know unless something goes horribly wrong, they would not know about a lot of this stuff. A couple things like I think parking is noticeable, but I think a lot of this stuff goes behind the scenes and can lead to really big headaches for you as the event planner or even just your client. So Mary and I are going to lean on each other for our specific areas of expertise, but I know this is something I always just keep in my back pocket. Again, just to ask the question. Maybe this doesn't fall into your event, but just being aware can help you if you're at like a unique venue or unique space. Thinking about these things will save you from a headache on your event day. So our first P we're going to talk about here is permits. And Mary, I feel like you do more full event management than I'm doing these days. So what are some of the typical permits that you need for your events?
Yeah, so as many of you know, a lot of the events that I do are nonprofit events, and so those have like can have their own set of permits, but this is where it really varies by location. And so I'm actually not going to deep dive too much into those specifically because, fun fact, Washington State, where we're located, has some of the like strictest gambling and liquor laws that affect nonprofits. And so there are a lot of permits in regards to that, but they're so specific to our state, which is why I'm going to skip it over. But if you're like, wait, I want to hear more about this, you can send us an email and I can give you some info. But for the sake of general events and typical permits, I will list some of those. And so one of the things that a lot of cities require are some type of special event permits. And so it's kind of just the overarching permit that allows you to gather for an event. And many, many places require something like this. So that's pretty common and they're very easy and they're usually really cheap. And then you have things like a liquor license. I know I talked about liquor before, but like if you are serving alcohol on a premise, which many events do, depending on what the venue is, then there may be an additional license that's needed. Venues carry this a lot. Sometimes you need it. It just depends kind of where you're doing your event and what it's structured as. If we're getting into the food side of things, then there's always some type of food permit. It might be like a food truck, like health department permit, or just like food vendor health department permits, or it could be like a permit that once again, the venue or the banquet team already has. And so there's all of these things that have to do with food and beverage, but I'm keeping it high level here. And if you do those pop-up services, like if you do a festival and there are vendors that come and serve food, that's where there's lots of like temporary food establishment permits. And so you might be most familiar with those, or you might run into those the most. A few more because permits are so fun. For fire and things like that. You can have a like tent or structure permit depending on the size of it. Every place or city has a different kind of guideline on how big that is. But usually for us, if it's like a 10 by 20, we have to start getting maybe it's actually 20 by 20. Yeah. We have to start getting some type of fire permit for that. And so keep in mind the size of your tents because usually there are actually repercussions for something like that. And then the last thing is just like if you have a street closure, you're doing like an outside event maybe, or maybe you're just like renting out a street for some reason. A lot of times that goes through the local like transportation agency or permit, it just depends. But then that's why you need your street closure permit as well. There are others. And in fact, if I can say the weirdest one that I ran into, which you all might think
Go for it.
yes, is like a banner permit to hang a banner across a road. Like think of all the times you're driving and it's like, this so-and-so city fair days, like something like that. We were trying to hang one of those and there's like a Vision Zero policy where, it's trying not to interfere with vision and drivers and safety and all of that. And so there was a permit that we had to get. So there you go.
I mean, that's a long list, Mary. And I know you said it wasn't exhaustive. So I feel like a tip for listeners would be, I will say using like a chat GPT or an AI tool to help you with like an initial search. I would say you always have to fact check. It's probably not going to list everything, but that can sometimes just based on your parameters of like where you are and some of those things you listed, Mary, it could probably, if not tell you exactly what, at least get you to the right website. Because I feel like a lot of these permits usually go through your local, city, county. Sometimes they're on the state level, depending on where you are. But again, permits, they're not really fun and they take different amounts of time. I think that's what, like, something that surprised me has been the the timeline, just because as planners and producers, and I think we're getting asked to do things faster and faster. And there's certain things like that permit process, like you don't have control over that. I mean, you can hit deadlines. I'm sure some of them let you pay a rush fee, but that rush fee might be like, oh, the difference is, 3 weeks instead of, 60 days or something. Like they're not as instantaneous as we're used to getting other information.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say, if you're listening to this and you're not as familiar about the permitting process, try to take the time and figure it out. Like Logan was giving some tips on how to do that. But I do feel like it's our responsibility as like event planners and producers to know what these regulations are. Like it really is our responsibility to help hold people accountable. And so, yeah, and as boring as it is, you need to know about it. So here's your push to try to do that. Okay, Logan, with your realm of events, what is the type of permit that has surprised you the most?
Yeah, for me, I think one to call out, and I will admit I don't always know because I travel and do events all over. I don't always know all the local permits or regulations, but I usually have somebody on my team, our technical director, that's usually, or your like lead engineer would know this stuff. But one that did surprise me was anytime you want to use like haze or any kind of cryo, which like is like it's fog or smoke or something that comes up, but essentially what is it's not real smoke, but you have to get a permit that involves submitting a plan to the fire marshal of your area that you're in, and then usually having someone come on fire watch, meaning I think this is an amazing job for whoever gets to do this job, but the person then comes and literally they're from the fire department and they have to sit at your event and you have to know the hours they're there, and you usually like pay that person for the day they're there. But it's like, okay, fire watch starts at noon, which means starting at noon I can test my smoke. My event's not maybe till later, but then that person has to be present like throughout your event that you want to use smoke. And this is just something that I'm seeing as more of us learn how to DIY stuff, and you can just buy a little smoke machine, online. And like, I am not the person to know exactly what the threshold is. All my big shows, we definitely do it. And my pro sporting events I've done, even some of my smaller professional sporting events, like I have been guilty of being like, I plugged it in, let me see if it works. And someone goes, is the fire marshal here? And I went, oh, no, I have not seen them. And the person comes walking down the stairs like, I saw it, don't worry. Like I was like, oh, okay, next time I will make sure that somebody is in my vicinity, because I was like, I wasn't hitting it for that long. I just did a little test spurt. But yeah, that is, I think it's called like a special event permit, but again, something to reach out to like your local fire department, because you don't want the fire department to get called because or sprinklers to accidentally go off and cause damages to your venue because you used a fake smoke like effect at your event.
Yeah, it's a great call out. We get surprisingly, the fire marshal comes out to Seattle events a lot, Seattle specifically. So I think that's the other thing is people are like, well, like, do I need to do it? You just never know. So cover your butt.
Yeah, it's depending on how risk averse you are. And sometimes
Yeah.
even as a planner, like you don't have, Mary, you alluded to like the gambling laws being pretty strict here in Washington, like for nonprofits and for non-Washingtonians listening to this, it just means, when you're doing any kind of raffle or giveaway, like there are very strict regulations around it. And I know when I first moved here, I was definitely not familiar. And when I dove into it, like mid event planning for a client, I came across some stuff that I was like, oh, I think we're doing some of this. I'm going to send this to them. And they were like, yeah, no, we're aware. We just choose to ignore it. And I was like, oh, okay. But like I have in writing that I like was like, based on regulation, I'm pretty sure we have to do it this way. And they're like, nope, we're going to do it this way. And so I always feel like you need to say it. It's up to you if you decide you're comfortable still working that event and everything. But again, the risk on that, all those permits and everything are in their name as the event host. So at the end of the day, they don't have to listen to you, but it's worth asking the question. And yes, I don't remember those regulations like for my events in Philadelphia and stuff. Feels very Washington state specific. Moving on to another P here in our debunking the boring side of events. Let's talk about power. Hey, Mary, how do you go about asking about your power needs for your event?
Logan, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this because I am ashamed at how I ask about power for our events. So historically, when we did some outdoor events and I like knew the electrician well when I was working full time at a place, um, I knew what like the specs were. So when I would ask a vendor what they needed, I knew what to like ask them about. Since then, it's gone downhill from there because I'm not there anymore, and we do events everywhere. So we're at a walkthrough, and there's like an outlet, and I'm like, is that like a normal outlet? Like, is that? And so instead, we just we ask vendors what their power needs are, and then we go to the venue and have them like say if that's okay or not. It's gone too complicated with all the venues that we work at that I'm gonna pick and choose what we're experts at, and I'm just gonna refer to the people that are. So that is my lame answer about power. So Logan, please share with us, how do you go about asking your power needs for an event?
I mean, similar to you, Mary. Again, there are smarter people out there on the technical side. I had it on a show uh this month that or like back in November that I was laughing. I say I know enough tech to be dangerous, but you don't want me like plugging things in or operating. And I found myself at this event somehow being the graphics operator, switching what everyone saw on the screen and operating our virtual Zoom. And I was like, I feel like an octopus. Oh my gosh, it's too many. But I got the quick training on how to do a couple, like I don't normally switch and things like that. Um, but power is one, Mary. You do not want me, like, I'm good at math and numbers, but you don't want me figuring it out. So I do similar to you. I will say I've learned now if I'm ever getting to help with the venue selection, making sure, even if you don't know exactly what your event is, just having power on your list of like, where is it? How, what do you have? So you can just write it down. But also, like, have you had any events where you've had to bring in additional power? And that is really helpful to know because, like, I've had an event where that same event that I was working, our outside AV provider that we brought in, we luckily were able to get them to do a site visit. And I had that as a bonus tip a couple weeks ago. And they brought it up of being like, hey, we met with the venue and they said, they don't normally have power like in this area for what we want to do. And so it was like, okay, we need additional power. We didn't have to go get a generator. This is just paying Encore, the in-house provider, to give us additional power. But that is a line item on the budget. And something that they can just charge whatever they want for it because we need the power to do what we were trying to do. And this was a very simple event in the sense of like couple screens, microphone, podium, like nothing too crazy. It's just an older space. So that's something if you're selecting a venue, try to get ahead of that so you can factor that into your budget. And then to your point, Mary, as you're collecting vendors' power needs, collecting that information and then sharing that with your venue as soon as you can to figure out, is that going to overload the system? Because I mean, if we don't have power at most of the events we work, you don't really have an event. So it is a very crucial part of it.
Oh, for sure. And two thoughts. One, we offered a long time ago this venue checklist. So if you would like that, you reach out to us, send us an email, and we'll send it to you. Because one of the things on there is about power. So yes, absolutely. And then the other thing is that I don't know about you, Logan. I've worked with many venues, and like the venue manager, like behind closed doors, will be like, don't have us provide you an extension cord, just bring your own, it's going to be so much cheaper, things like that. I think we've all worked events where we have an extension cord and we're just going to go plug it in the wall and it's going to do its thing. So there's also that funny little dynamic, I guess, about power as well, because it's there, it's in the wall.
It's there, it's in the wall, but as many people, like, I don't know if you, Mary, have ever like blown a fuse in your house or at a rental house with like too many people blow drying their hair at the same time or a curling iron. It is one where I'm like, it is an outlet, but it's like not all outlets are created equal. Also, every system's different. And for the scale again of some of the stuff you're doing, it's like you're probably going
Oh
to need
yeah,
a
it
couple
depends
more
what it
outlets.
is. Yeah,
But yes, I'm
for
with
sure.
you, Mary, because it is one that it's power to me is something that's so simple. Like it's easy to get ahead of. What we're telling you is very simple right now, but it just gets forgotten amongst all the other important and obvious things. But if all of a sudden the power goes out or this big activation you were trying to do, they're out of power and now you have a mad sponsor, like those things, it can like snowball into something bigger. So
Yeah, one of the things that we should get ahead of, right? Just
yeah.
makes it all easier. Logan, what's something that you've forgotten about that actually needs a lot of power?
Oh, this one, I feel like I have a good story and it's not coming to my mind right now. It's mainly thinking about uh anytime you have, I feel like big like food and beverage, like coolers and like freezers and even heat boxes and stuff like that. Like that does take a lot of power from one area and having too many of those plugged in will blow. Um I did laugh. In virtual, I've told the story before too, but we had an outage on a platform I was on because their servers caught fire. And it was a whole thing that I added to my list because it was like, again, I was like, obviously I'm dealing with this digital product, but it's clearly powered by something physically somewhere. And so I just started like that was added to my checklist of like, have your servers ever caught on fire? Do you have any power surge, any power surges that happen with any of your tools that are digital that would impact my service? So, Mary, do you have a good one of anything you've forgotten about that needs lots of power?
I'm trying to think, and I think maybe it's like some sound system thing, like when it's more DIY, and then someone like wants to plug something in. But I haven't had an issue with that either. But sometimes I'm wondering, like, is that okay? The things that just you kind of question just slightly a little bit. But I feel like that's kind of it. I can't maybe outdoor, like, heaters and things like that. Sometimes we'll just, like once again, at one of my old, jobs, we just throw heaters up a lot of the time, and I think that those actually can be tricky. So, yeah, that's what I would add.
Yeah, and then one more thing to think with power, depending on your audience and like the type of event you're hosting, think about the attendee experience. If this is like a user conference and you want people using their laptops, skimping on providing, power drops at all the tables that they're at, while it will save you significant money in your budget sometimes. Now you have people like sitting in the hallway and on the floors and in random places where they can find outlets. It's one of the things I love. Shout out to the Seattle Convention Center, our beautiful new building that opened the last 2 years. I think they've built it really nicely with attendees in mind of needing space outside the ballrooms to sit and take a call. And they have lots of outlets all over the place. And they get that. They did that because it's a newer space. I know that's not the case in every venue, but just think about what your attendees' needs are and make sure you're accounting for that. Would be my other tip. All right, Mary. Third P. We still have some other more boring things that don't start with P we'll keep talking about, but our third P, parking. How do you estimate parking needs for your attendees, vendors, and all the deliveries that come with an event?
Parking is rough. Normally, we try to select a venue that has good parking. Like that really is one of the things, or has good nearby lots because we do a lot of events in the city, right? And so it is just more like what is accessible nearby, whether it is a parking lot at the venue or not. But when the venue has its own parking lot, it is a selling point. Like that's something that even if they have to pay for it, people are like they like the convenience of that. So I would say it's very important, something that we try to select along in that process. And then when we estimate the needs, it's just not common that there's going to be enough spots for every single attendee, depending on how big the event is, of course. But if you have a small event, you're probably not doing it at the convention center. So like you don't need all those spots for that, but you're probably doing it at a smaller space where there is only like 50 spots, so you do run into this issue. So we try to make sure there is at least, like I said before, a lot. A lot of times we've done a shuttle to a lot so that we're still providing access to a lot. We encourage people to carpool, especially depending on how tight it is. And kind of we try to like explain that ahead of time because people get mad about parking. Like every event that's had a park, like we know it's a small lot or something, we've always had an attendee that gets mad. And we're always like, we warned you about it beforehand. We encourage you to carpool. This is also a city, so you should be used to it, But still, people still seem to get mad about it. And then the other thing is to consider not forget like your volunteers or staff, like people who are arriving there either at like a different time. Is parking going to be available to them? Because we really want it to be accessible for those people, especially they're the kind of people who are like loading in and loading out or staying the longest. Not that we don't want that to be for guests, but you know what I mean. The folks working the event, like we want to have nice parking. We want it to be convenient. And then the loading dock situation for whether there's a dock or just an area in a parking lot where people can unload is really important for these big trucks, and things like that always come for events. And yeah, those are kind of the main things that I can think of that we consider. Logan, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think I would take a page out of the book of like major sporting events, in cities. They always over communicate, to your point, Mary, of like how much they tell you different options of how to get there and you know before you go. I think making sure for me, it's usually I'm calculating for like my team. And so needing or in adjacent to my team and making sure everyone who I'm asking to be on site or reports to me has somewhere to park or a plan for parking. And it's not just something I talk about, it's something I actually like walk and figure out where it is, or, signage, or my sports stuff. It's like, oh, there's staff parking. And it's like, okay, is staff for the team or the league? Does it count contractors? To your point, Mary, we want to make sure it's not too far of a walk. You want to make sure it's safe if you're coming in like super late at night or really early in the morning. So it is important. And I had a pro tip from an event I went to that somebody was talking about concessions when you're negotiating with your venue, especially your hotels, is having a number in your head of how many parking, like maybe parking passes you want to negotiate for, if that's for the client, but also for you as like the planning team, or again, however many people you want to count into that, because that can sometimes be monetary value, right? A lot of hotels will let you buy passes to give people at whatever, $20 to $70 a pop, depending where you are in Seattle sometimes. And that can be something you can negotiate, which hypothetically should cost the hotel nothing to give you something like that.
And you can negotiate valet parking too, which is also really nice for, if you have certain VIPs or whoever. I'm not gonna lie, I love valet parking, but that's one of the things I'm like, it's a work expense because I gotta get in there. Anyway, that's just me. Logan, can you think of any other solutions for parking? The one other one I thought of is like using like rideshare discounts that you provide to your attendees. But I will say the times that I've seen that happen or even have done it, it really didn't work very well. So if that's worked for you, anyone, let us know how you did that.
I don't think I've had that work in such a long time. And like one of our local sports teams here in Seattle keeps promoting it, and I've tried it and I'm like, it still doesn't work. I don't know. But like someone who's worked for it hasn't tried it. Yeah. I think if another one to your point of, just providing options, even if you're not going to cover it, like just doing your good faith of like, hey, there's ample street parking on this street, or here's a paid lot over here, or really just being honest of like, there is no parking and this is the end, we're at rush hour. Please use rideshare and, whatever else you can do. Cause that is frustrating. And to your point, parking is like the first impression for some of your attendees or even your staff. And if they have a hard time parking, they're then bringing that stressed energy right to your check-in, right to your event. And so that is, again, not sexy, not fun, kind of boring, but like very crucial. So thinking through your parking plan should be on your list.
And one additional thought there is if you're working with vendors, I think a wonderful thing to do to build that rapport and really help them out is to send them that, know before you go email that like has the parking listed and even like a Google pin, or we've done like screenshots of the lot with like an arrow when it's pretty complicated. And I love receiving stuff like that because I get stressed out about parking in cities, especially. So yeah, it's just a nice thing to do for your attendees, but for your vendors as well.
Yeah. Anytime you can help them, I think it's a nice thing. So don't forget about parking. Mary, I mean, we've been talking a while. We're going to have to do a part 2 for this, listeners, just because there's so many, I guess, boring tasks that go along with what we do.
Boring things to talk about.
Not to deter you if you're new to events. This is just like, it's part of the doing the business. Mary, our second to last one, though, that we'll try to get in this episode, let's talk about trash, garbage. Who is typically responsible for trash pickup, and how do you confirm it won't be an issue mid-event?
All right. I love working at hotels because they are really responsible for trash pickup. Like you can leave boxes, in rooms and they'll just dispose of them. You don't have to break them down in many cases. We were just doing an event at a hotel, and the year before we did the event at the same place, and they have a lot of balloons. And so we were breaking down the balloons, but the balloons had confetti in them. And so we'd have to put the balloon in a trash bag and then pop it so we could like catch the confetti in the trash bag. And we had the same balloons this year. And I just was like looking at the venue person. I was like, so do we have to put those in the trash? And for all my environmental friends, I am sorry. But it's like midnight and you're asking if you need to pop the balloons. And they were like, honestly, if you just leave them there, someone will take care of it. And I was like, thank you. This is why we're paying for hotel pricing for events, because I'm leaving them there. And so our hotels are great for trash pickup. But then also we do a lot of events where they're at like a community center, or something like that. And we got to take everything out. It's the situation of if you bring it in, you bring it out. And so we have to explain to clients, like at the end of the night, like the caterer will usually take a lot of things, but let's say they just do like a drop-off caterer or like something like that. Who's taking the trash? And we tell our clients, like, you will need to go dispose of this trash. And they're always like, so I'm going to put like a trash bag in my like SUV. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you're paying for. or you can find a caterer who will do the trash service for you, you know? It's just kind of funny where people try to cut costs, and I've noticed that trash is one of those things. So, Logan, what would you add about this lovely subject of trash?
I mean, it's just one of those things that like my partner does a lot of yard work and things. And so like I've learned taking things even to the dump costs money, which you could look at laugh at me, but I grew up in a suburb and we had, the trash truck that came and I, figured out we paid for trash pickup. So obviously if you're trying to take lots of trash in a pickup truck somewhere, you're probably going to get charged for it. So it's like, it costs money. It just depends on, does your venue eat the fee or are you going to have to pay for it as the planner? For me, my call out for everybody listening, because I had this happen this fall, is one, and I'm guilty of this. This is going on my list for 2026 and beyond, is I always forget to ask for a trash can for the production teams or the AV teams, because that's a good, like Mary, you mentioned, like the hotel's great at like going and, emptying trash. But if you don't even have a trash can, they're not going to get your trash. And so to help like just keep areas clean, asking for trash cans, and then also befriending any of the hospitality staff, because then they will probably forget about the trash can in our darkened area, being like, oh yeah, we have a can here. Where can I help you take the bag out? One of my sporting events I work, our control room, it's like a running joke. They never check the trash in this room. So it's like whoever's the last person out has to take the trash with them and like put it by one of the fan facing trash cans, because they check those religiously. But it's just this one thing, because if not, we'll come back the next morning and like the food, stuff's just been sitting in there and it's like it's just kind of gross. So trash matters, I guess, is my main thing.
Trash does matter.
It
And
does matter.
in your event kit, have some extra trash bags. So those have come in handy so many times, from one reason or another. You can rent trash bins if you ever need them, usually from the city. So keep all this type of stuff in mind. One of our local cities has like a grant you can apply for your event, and they'll deliver a bunch of trash cans for you for free. So look into the resources that might be around you for sure.
That's a great pro tip, Mary. I think my last one would also be how to know the second half of that question of like confirm it won't become an issue mid-event. I feel like I've heard some complaints from event hosts of banquet staff clearing things or like interrupting programming. And a lot of times I'll tell you, it's not because they're doing it on purpose. It's because no one ever gave them the programming schedule. So just make sure your like banquet team and or your venue person knows like, hey, here's where there's some breaks for them to like, if they're going to refresh the room or like if they need to go and empty even the recycling bin, not just talking about garbage, but like recycling where it's bottles and that's going to make a lot of noise. Like when's a good time to do that so that they're not picking up those things, at a very important time in your event. And a lot of venue teams, I think, are pretty well versed in trying to find the right time. But I know any crew that I can be like, hey, we have a break in 20 minutes. They're like, oh, perfect. We'll come in and, snag some stuff then. But they often just like don't get that information.
It's a great tip, Logan. So many fun, boring things that we can talk about. And the last one for this episode is about Wi-Fi. And Logan, I'm so excited to ask you specifically about this. So what's your checklist for ensuring adequate Wi-Fi or network access, especially for like live streams or AV and things like that?
I just think very cathartically, we should allow all of our listeners to join me in a scream into the ether of the frustration we all have with event Wi-Fi. I'll pause. I'll wait if you'd like to scream. All right. I hope you feel better. I screamed in my head because, Mary, this is like, there's no easy answer for this. And if you're like me, you're getting quotes back that are incredibly high for Wi-Fi. I feel like it's a forever debate with planners of like, why are we paying for Wi-Fi at a hotel when we're, doing all these other fees? So for me, it's mainly being very transparent with whoever is providing your Wi-Fi, whether you're negotiating your contract with your venue and maybe you can try to get that waived. That's pretty hard to do. Depending on your relationship, maybe you can, but usually it's provided by the in-house AV provider or their IT department. Or if you have a big enough event, bring your own IT department in. But I have a lot of people who fall in, they don't have enough budget to bring in an outside AV, like IT person and network. So they're using the in-house folks. Just be upfront of like how many connections you actually need. I had a client who got quoted, I think about $4,000. So $40 per person for 100 people to have access to Wi-Fi. And it's like, well, doesn't the Wi-Fi from their room work? And these people wouldn't answer, but we were like, let's take that chance and we can always pay for it as we need it. And we sat there and actually counted and said, okay, between the laptops we need for AV and our registration check-in and maybe our auction, okay, that might add up to like 8 devices. Let's pay for 10. And that we slashed our, we're paying 10% of what they quoted us for it. And then also knowing what you need to have is an Ethernet. You probably have bad flashbacks to COVID times and virtual of how important it was to be hardline into the internet. That is my non-negotiable for anything that is streaming, or if I'm bringing in a virtual presenter, you have to have an Ethernet cable. Just it's 1,000 times more reliable. It doesn't mean necessarily it's a faster signal, but it's a more reliable signal because it's a physical device plugging into a laptop. And again, that's something that you want to make clear what you're trying to do with it. And for an event like a recent one I worked, I only had one Ethernet cable. Some people like redundancies and would ask for two. But then make sure you go to speedtest.com or fast.com once you're in at your event and take screenshots and document if you feel like you're not getting the speeds that you were promised and paying for. And that's a negotiation tactic either during or post event, just to make sure, because that's just, again, a hidden thing. At that event, I'll tell you guys, we didn't have a single attendee make a comment that there wasn't Wi-Fi available, because indeed their room Wi-Fi worked for them. So that was, again, an easy savings there. But I feel like I've been at a lot of industry events where there's a lot of planners just venting about Wi-Fi charges.
I love everything that you said, of course. When it's like a conference, I don't know how people feel about this, but I appreciate the Wi-Fi that like it bumps folks off if they're not using it after like an hour or something. When I'm an attendee, I'm actually kind of annoyed by that because I always have to reaccess it, but it saves your like the amount of people that you can have logged into it or whatever. I don't even know how to describe, you know what I'm talking about. And so I like it for that reason. Like it does control the Wi-Fi usage for sure. And then the other thing that we've seen a lot of vendors do, not AV, but I'm talking like registration needs to plug in some laptops, or something like that. They bring their own hotspots, and it's because they don't want to have that additional charge for the Wi-Fi. So I don't know. That's kind of interesting to me as well.
Yeah, those have gotten a lot more affordable for, again, something like that where it's a limited number of devices. I think you don't need to understand all of this. Just like we said, we don't understand power, but just you should be asking some of these questions and pushing back where you feel like maybe that's too much or too little for what you need for your event. But yeah, a hotspot is definitely helpful. Another hack I've done is for venues that don't charge for Wi-Fi, but maybe are saying, hey, this is the Wi-Fi. We usually just put the password everywhere, but it's all one connection. So meaning, and Mary, you worked an event that with me that did this, where we literally went around and like took all the pieces of paper and hid them because we needed the Wi-Fi to still be fast for a virtual component of our event. And this event didn't have the capabilities to like site to essentially like split the connection so that the Wi-Fi, I guess, get to pull from this huge connection and our hard line would pull from another. It was like, no, if there's a lot of people on the Wi-Fi, it will slow you down. So that's another question just to ask when you're paying for separate things is like, is the Wi-Fi a part of my Ethernet connection and you're just paying for the cable, or are they two separate buckets of internet speed you can pay for?
I love it. Yeah. So many fun things that, I mean, I say I love it, but I actually do appreciate this conversation. There's lots of like tangible things I feel like that hopefully listeners you can actually take and apply to your events, even if it's not.
We clearly have a lot to say about the boring side of event. I mean, that's what I'm like you said, there's a lot of what we do which would be classified as boring. This is just the not fun stuff. And we will, listeners, be bringing you a part 2 in season 6, which I can't believe we're saying. In 2026 we will tackle another another take. So if we miss some that you really want to make sure we talk about, please send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And Mary, you have our bonus tip this week.
I do have our bonus tip this week. And as we've been talking, I've been thinking about the event kit, and our event kit always, I think there's lots of similarities in everybody's kits. There are new things, all that good stuff. But there's a few things that I'm just going to name to consider putting part of your event kit because you might need them. You know how it goes. One of those things is gloves, like disposable gloves. When you're talking about trash, I was thinking about how we've just had to pick up some gross stuff before. So disposable gloves. Another thing is paper towels. Those also, for one reason or another, have come into use. We've had to like wipe something off or do something. And then the third thing is a lint roller for like tablecloths or like anything that might just pick up the little specks. And so those are 3 other boring things that you can add to your event kit.
I need to add a lint roller. We wear so much black. I should definitely have that in my kit. Thank you, Mary. That brings us to the end of our episode. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can send us an email at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can join us for the 2025 Better Events Conference on Thursday, December 18th in Seattle by visiting bettereventspod.com/conference. You can connect with us on LinkedIn directly as well. Just let us know you heard about us from the podcast. We love hearing from you. And if you want more Better Events content, join our private community on Substack. As always, we want to thank you for listening, and we'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.